All right, let's dive right into a really provocative idea, one that comes from the work of Professor Muhammet Doğan. It's a simple question, but it has huge implications. What if the very meaning of religion, as many Muslims understand it today, has been, well, kind of lost in translation over the centuries?
I mean, really think about that for a second. What if the most essential ideas in the Quran have drifted so far from what they originally meant? That's the core premise we're going to unpack today. We're going on a journey to figure out what the Quran actually means when it uses the word deen.
So where does this whole problem even begin? Well, the central argument is that over hundreds and hundreds of years, this massive gap has formed. On one side, you have the Quran's original message, and on the other, you have all these cultural traditions that many people now just assume are the religion.
And this quote from the author's preface, wow, it just cuts right to the heart of the issue. The big worry here is something called semantic drift. You know, it's when words slowly, almost sneakily, change their meaning over time. And the end result? It's become, as he argues, almost impossible to figure out what God's original message even was.
So, okay, if the meaning is drifted, what are we left with? The author has a very specific term for it. He calls it a fabricated din. Basically, a human-made religion, something built up over time, just layer upon layer of traditions and interpretations.
And he gets really specific about what this looks like in the real world. You know, he points to things he sees as symptoms, like an obsession with objects, rosaries, special clothes, or the belief that saints can step in and help you out, or getting bogged down in tiny ritual details. This also includes, and this is a big one for him, accepting hadith collections as a second, almost equal primary source of religion, something he argues was never the intention.
And look, this isn't just some abstract, theological debate for him. No way. The author draws a straight line from this fabricated din to a lot of the social and political problems we see in Muslim societies. The argument is simple. Losing the original meaning isn't just a spiritual problem. It has had massive, real-world consequences.
Okay, so if that's the fabricated religion, then what's the real deal? What's the authentic one? Well, to figure that out, you gotta go back to the source, right? Back to the Quran itself.
So when you look at the Qur'an, the concept of deen is actually pretty straightforward. It's built on a few core ideas. First, it's about total submission and devotion to God. Second, it's about pure, unshakable monotheism, what's known as Tawheed. This is the idea that God is the one and only authority. And third, it's about following that system of moral guidance that God revealed through the prophets.
And this is where you can really see the contrast, side by side. On one hand, you've got the fabricated deen, which the author says is all about human traditions, fear, division. It complicates everything. But on the other hand, you have the Quranic deen. And that's presented as God-given, liberating, empowering, and unifying for everyone. It's a system that's supposed to be based on the Quran, on reason, and on nature itself, not just on cultural traditions and hearsay.
And it turns out, there's actually a specific term in the Quran for this original, uncorrupted version of religion.
That term is Deen ul-Qayyim. You can translate it as the straight or sound deen. This is supposed to be the authentic religion. It's pure monotheism, and this is key, it's in perfect harmony with the natural order of the universe and with our own built-in human nature, a concept called fitra.
And this, right here, brings us back to the core problem he's identifying. The real tragedy from this perspective is that this simple, straightforward path, this Deen al-Qayyum, has been buried. It's been covered by so many layers of cultural additions and human interpretations over the centuries that it's become nearly impossible to even see it anymore.
So, if the gap is that huge, what do you do about it? What's the author's solution for actually bridging that divide?
Well, he lays out a pretty clear three-step call to action. First things first, just acknowledge that the gap is real. Recognize the difference between cultural habits and the Quranic message. Step 2, prioritize the source. That means returning to the Quran as the one and only unadulterated source for understanding what deen is. And finally, step 3, really engage with the text. Read it for yourself with the goal of understanding its world, trying your best to leave all that later cultural baggage at the door.
Now, just to be super clear, he's not saying, let's go start a new sect. Not at all. This is a call for a new method. It's an invitation, really, for each person to take a personal, intellectual journey back to the original source and just read it for themselves.
And that really leaves us with a huge question to chew on, doesn't it? How might any important text change if we could somehow read it without the weight of centuries of interpretation? You know, if we could just approach it fresh.
It's a challenge that gets right to the heart of what faith, tradition, and our own personal understanding are all about.